Did you know that the most famous monster in Greek mythology was a victim at all? And what if I told you she was killed in her sleep and her face was placed on the breastplate of the goddess who punished her? Her name's Medusa, and trust me, there were two versions of her, written 700 years apart by two different people for two completely different purposes. By now, I'm assuming you've brought back some memories from your history books, and the story rings a bell, with Perseus being the hero. But here's the thing, that's the newer version. The older one is darker, disturbing, and way more honest about what actually happened. Before we begin, protect your eyes, because we're about to face the real story of Medusa, and this time, both of them will come for you.
Medusa, from mortal to monster.
Medusa is one of the most recognizable figures in Western mythology. Her image appears on the breastplate of Athena in ancient Greek sculpture, on the shields of soldiers who believed her face would terrify their enemies, on the coins of Syracuse in the 5th century BC, on the logo of Versace, and in the opening sequence of a Percy Jackson movie. She has been continuously present in Western visual culture for approximately 2,700 years. In almost every version of her story that circulates today, Medusa was originally a beautiful woman. Poseidon desired her and violated her in the temple of Athena. Athena, rather than punishing the god who committed the act, punished Medusa, transforming her beautiful hair into snakes and her face into something so hideous that anyone who looked at it turned to stone. Eventually, Perseus came along, used a mirrored shield to look at her reflection rather than directly, cut off her head while she slept, and used the head as a weapon for the rest of his adventures. This version of the story comes from Ovid, a Roman poet. Writing in approximately 08 AD, 700 years after the oldest Greek sources, the oldest Greek sources tell a different story entirely, and the differences between the two versions, what was added, what was removed, and why are more revealing than either version alone. Two primary sources, two completely different Medusas, starting with the one that came first.
Part 1. Two Medusas.
The oldest surviving description of Medusa is brief, specific, and almost nothing like the version that became dominant. In that version, the oldest one, Medusa, is one of three Gorgon sisters, Steno, Euryale, and Medusa, daughters of two ancient sea gods. They live at the edge of the known world, beyond the ocean, near the realm of night. All three are described as monstrous. None of them were ever anything else. There is no mention of beautiful hair, no mention of a transformation, no mention of a divine punishment. Medusa was born a monster. She was always a monster, and she was the only mortal one, and while her sisters were immortal, she was not. The reason for this asymmetry is never explained. The tradition also records that Poseidon lay with Medusa in a soft meadow among spring flowers. It does not describe this as a violation. It does not describe any divine response. It simply records that it happened, and that from this union came Pegasus and Chrysaor, who were born when Perseus later cut off Medusa's head. That is the complete oldest account. Monster, mortal, encounter with Poseidon, death by Perseus, two children from the severed neck, the version most people know today, the beautiful maiden, the temple violation, the divine punishment, appears for the first time in a Roman text written approximately 700 years after the oldest Greek sources. The author was a Roman poet. He was not preserving a tradition. He was elaborating on one, adding a backstory that no surviving Greek source before him contains in this form. In this later version, Medusa is introduced not as a monster, but as a beautiful woman, whose hair was her most remarkable feature, admired by many suitors. Poseidon violates her in the temple of Athena, and Athena, rather than punishing the god who committed the act, punishes Medusa. She transforms her beautiful hair into snakes, her face into something so hideous that anyone who looks at it turns to stone. These are two fundamentally different stories. In the first, Medusa is a monster who has a sexual encounter with a god and is killed by a hero. In the second, Medusa is a beautiful woman who is violated by a god, punished by a goddess for being violated, and then killed by a hero while she sleeps. The mechanism of her death is the same in both versions. Everything else is different.
Part 2. The original monster.
The oldest Medusa is disturbing in a way that the popular version is not, because her situation makes no sense and the tradition preserves that senselessness without apology. She is mortal, her sisters are immortal. No source explains why. She is born into a family of monsters, her parents are primordial sea deities. Her siblings include the Gree, who share a single eye and tooth between them, and other creatures of the deep. The family exists at the edge of the world, beyond the ocean, where night begins. This is not a place that mortal beings inhabit. And yet Medusa, the only mortal one, is there. Poseidon finds her in a meadow of spring flowers. The specific detail of the meadow and the flowers is in the oldest text. It is not a dark place, it is not a temple, it is a soft meadow in spring. The encounter is recorded as a fact, not as a crime. The tradition does not call it a violation. It does not call it consent. It simply records that it happened and moves on. Perseus is sent to kill her, not because she has done anything wrong. A king named Polydex wants Perseus's mother Danae and needs Perseus out of the way. He sends Perseus to retrieve Medusa's head because he expects the mission to be fatal. Medusa's death is not a consequence of her actions. It is a consequence of a king's desire for a woman who is not Medusa. The gods help Perseus. Athena gives him a mirrored shield so he can see Medusa's reflection without looking at her directly. Hermes gives him winged sandals and a curved blade. The nymphs give him the cap of invisibility. Perseus is the most assisted hero in Greek mythology. He kills Medusa while she sleeps, guided to her location by information he extracted from the Gree, her own relatives, whose single shared eye he stole and used as leverage. The tradition presents this as heroism. The specific details of how it was accomplished, the sleeping victim, the stolen eye, the multiple divine aids, communicate something more complicated. When Perseus cuts off Medusa's head, two beings emerge from the severed neck. Pegasus, the winged horse, who will go on to serve Zeus directly, carrying his thunderbolts, and Chrysaor, a giant born holding a golden sword. Both are the children of Poseidon and Medusa. Both were inside her when Perseus killed her. The tradition does not comment on this. One ancient source adds a detail that almost never appears in popular accounts. When Perseus cut off Medusa's head, her sisters, the immortal Gorgons, wailed in grief over her body. Athena heard that wail and invented the flute to recreate the sound of it. The instrument of music that became central to Greek culture and Greek religious ritual was invented as an imitation of the sound of grief over Medusa's death.
Part 3. The Woman, the Gods, the Injustice.
The version most people know appears as a brief detail inside a much larger story. Not as Medusa's story, but as a passing explanation of how a beautiful woman became a monster, told from the perspective of the hero who killed her. The addition is a backstory before Perseus, before the snakes, before everything. There was a woman with extraordinary hair who was desired by many suitors, including gods. Poseidon violated her in the temple of Athena. Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, virgin, owner of the temple, was so outraged by the desecration of her sacred space that she punished the woman who had been violated in it. She transformed Medusa's beautiful hair into snakes. She made her face into something that destroys anyone who sees it. This is the version that has dominated Western culture for 2,000 years, and it is worth being specific about what it contains. A god commits a violent act against a woman. A goddess, rather than punishing the god, punishes the woman. The woman is then killed by a hero who is celebrated for the killing. The most powerful object in the story, the severed head that Perseus uses to destroy his enemies, comes from the woman who was violated, punished, and killed. The Roman poet who wrote this version was eventually exiled by the emperor. Whether he intended his audience to read the story as a critique of the divine order that punished Medusa rather than Poseidon is a question that has been debated for centuries. What is documented is that this version humanized Medusa in a way that no previous source had done. The oldest version gives her no interiority, no history, no loss. She is what she is, a monster at the edge of the world. The later version gives her something worse than monstrousness. It gives her the specific quality of someone who was something else before she was what she became, and who became what she became through no fault of her own. That version is more disturbing than the oldest one. not because it involves a transformation, but because it involves an institution, a goddess, a temple, a divine system of justice, choosing to punish the wrong person and doing so with complete authority and no consequence.
Part 4. Perseus, the hero who killed a woman in her sleep.
The popular retelling presents the encounter as a heroic confrontation. The brave hero facing the terrible monster, using wit and divine assistance to overcome an enemy that no ordinary mortal could defeat. The primary accounts describe something more specific. Perseus finds Medusa sleeping. He uses the mirrored shield to locate her position while looking at her reflection. He approaches her while she is asleep. He cuts off her head. He does not fight her. He does not outmaneuver her in combat. He kills her in her sleep with a weapon given to him by a god, guided by a shield given to him by a goddess, wearing sandals given to him by another god, using information extracted from her relatives by theft. Medusa's sisters, immortal, unkillable, pursued Perseus after he killed her. He escaped using the cap of invisibility. They could not find him. He flew away with their sister's head in a bag, and they could not follow because they could not see him. The tradition preserves this without presenting it as morally complicated. Perseus is a hero. The mission is a success. The head is a weapon. These are the terms in which the story is told, but the specific mechanics of how it was accomplished and the tradition is specific. In multiple accounts about those mechanics, communicate a story about institutional power, divine assistance, and the specific vulnerability of someone who is asleep. What happens next is documented with equal specificity. Perseus uses Medusa's head to rescue Andromeda, turning the sea monster Cetus to stone. He uses it to turn the Titan Atlas to stone when Atlas refuses him hospitality. Atlas becomes the Atlas Mountains of North Africa, still carrying the sky on stone shoulders. He uses it to turn King Polydex and his entire court to stone when he returns and finds his mother still being coerced. After Perseus has no further use for the head, he gives it to Athena, the goddess who punished Medusa for being violated in her temple. Athena places it on her aegis, her divine breastplate, where it remains. The face that destroyed anyone who looked at it becomes a protective symbol, placed on shields, on armor, on temple walls, on coins, on the breastplate of the goddess, who in one version was responsible for Medusa becoming what she was. Medusa, after death, becomes a guardian. The tradition finds this appropriate. It does not explain why.
Part 5. Medusa's lineage.
The most remarkable aspect of Medusa's story is not her death. It is what her death produced. From her severed neck came Pegasus, the winged horse, who flew directly to Olympus and entered the service of Zeus, carrying his thunderbolts. Every thunderstorm in the Greek tradition was delivered by an animal born from Medusa's death. The connection between divine power and Medusa's blood is structural, not incidental. From the same severed neck came Chrysaor born holding a golden sword. Father of the triple-bodied giant Geryon, grandfather, through that line to a series of monsters that Hercules later had to defeat. Medusa's death did not end a lineage. It created one. When Perseus flew over Libya carrying the head, drops of Medusa's blood fell through the holes in the bag onto the desert below. Each drop became a serpent, the venomous snakes of the Sahara Desert, which were a genuine geographical reality for the ancient world. Documented by soldiers who crossed North Africa, were explained by the tradition as Medusa's blood falling from the sky. Her blood made the desert dangerous. When Perseus rested on the shores of Ethiopia after rescuing Andromeda, he placed the head on a bed of seaweed. The seaweed absorbed Medusa's power and hardened into coral. The coral reefs of the Red Sea, which ancient sailors navigated and depended on, were explained as the materialized power of Medusa's severed head resting on living plants. The head itself, after Perseus finished using it, went to Athena. Athena wore it on her aegis for the rest of eternity. Every depiction of Athena with the Gorgonian, which is to say, most depictions of Athena, is a depiction of the goddess carrying the permanent consequence of Medusa's death as her most recognizable attribute. And the detail that is almost never mentioned is that the sound of the Gorgon's grief over Medusa's death became the flute, the instrument, the sound of Greek religious ceremony, Greek theater, Greek daily life. Rooted in one ancient tradition in the specific sound of two immortal sisters mourning the death of the only mortal one, Medusa did not disappear when Perseus cut off her head. She became the sky above Africa, the blood in the desert, the coral in the Red Sea, the thunderstorm, the flute, and the face on the breastplate of the goddess who in one version made her what she was. The hero who killed her used her power to reshape two continents and then gave what remained of her to the goddess who punished her. The tradition calls this a heroic story. It preserved all of the above in the same texts. Both things are true simultaneously.
Epilogue, two stories, two versions, one tradition.
Two Medusas 700 years apart. Two completely different stories that the popular tradition collapsed into one. In the first, she was always a monster. Born mortal at the edge of the world among immortal sisters, encountered by a god in a spring meadow, killed by a hero while she slept. Her death produced the winged horse that serves Zeus, the bloodline that Hercules had to defeat, the serpents of the Sahara, the coral of the Red Sea, and the instrument of music that became central to Greek religious life. In the second, she was the most beautiful woman alive, violated in a goddess's temple, punished by that goddess for being violated, killed by a hero who was sent to kill her because a king wanted his mother. Her face, after death, became the protective symbol on the breastplate of the goddess who punished her. The popular version took both of these and made a simpler story: a monster, a hero, a mirror, a head. The simplification is understandable. The original versions are not simple. They are specific, internally consistent, and full of details that the tradition recorded with care and never explained. The details are still there, in every version that survived, waiting for someone to read them correctly. Medusa has been on the breastplate of Athena for 3,000 years. She has been on shields, coins, buildings, and fashion logos. She has been in every culture that inherited the Greek tradition, and in almost every version of her story, she appears only as the thing Perseus killed. The tradition recorded considerably more than that. It just told the story from Perseus's perspective and left Medusa's version in the details. The details are still there. If you like the video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and follow for more.